And we are live. So this is our 5 minutes before we actually get started, and chance to welcome folks in. Let me just first start by welcoming Jim himself. Jim, pleasure to have you
Thanks.
here.
Thanks, Josh. It's nice to be with you again. We spent a lot of interesting times together.
We have, yes, we all over the world, and I'm thrilled that I know you've been trying to retire.
Yeah, I
and,
say I failed.
well, we're enjoying those failures, especially your writing and all you've been doing lately. So this is a wonderful opportunity for us to spend 30 minutes together talking about important stuff. And
Yeah, I think today is it's even more important than it has been in a while.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this movement, I like to think of it as an early movement because I think it's still it gives me joy to actually say that it's only in the early days, even though a
I
lot
think
of
it's in
people
there.
think it's the opposite. They think it's the end days.
No, I know. If you think about the internet and the dot-com bust in the late 1990s, because everybody piled onto the internet, and it wasn't until the mid 2003, 2005, in that kind of time frame, that some of the companies like Amazon really took off, although it had been there for a while. But the Airbnb and Uber and the people that really learned how to use the internet for new business opportunities, new business models. And I think
Yeah.
it's going to take the same time period with AI. It's going to everybody's going to use it for a bunch of different things, but to really change business models, it's going to
Yes.
take a long time.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Everything important takes time for it to really sink in. I look at agility though as a multi-century type of thing. That it's if we think about the century level, um, we got a long way to go for this to sink
Yeah.
in.
but it really has been. I mean, I recently did a presentation where I looked back at telephone operators in the 1930s and 1940s. And at some point in time, there were 400,000 switchboard operators, and all of those jobs went away with automation.
Yep.
But it created jobs in circuit design, telephone switching design, installation, maintenance, training. So it created a whole new set of jobs. But the
Right.
telephone switchboard operator jobs went away.
Right.
And I think there's going to be some of those kinds of, we're really going to have to get back into the continuous training and learning cycle and learn how to do it even faster because things are going to change over the next 10 years, I think more than the last 10.
Yeah. Yeah. My daughter just graduated college, and a lot of people said to me, "What did she study?" And I say liberal arts. They look at me funny, and I'm like, "No, damn right, liberal arts." Liberal arts. And then there was a graduate who spoke at the one of the dinners, and he said, "You've just gotten the most adaptable education you can get,
Right.
because liberal arts is all about learning from great books, learning from great thinkers." And I had told my daughter, now that you've graduated, your next job is to read the great books in the industry you're going into, and study the hell out of them, and listening to them on the train on audio, and be immersed and continue to learn from those things. And that's what you got to do.
I have a grandson that's going into college next fall, and he's going to major in engineering and minor in communications.
Wow, that's a nice combination. Well, we're about to be officially live, um, and start the show, and we can repeat anything we just talked about that was important. Welcome everyone who's here, and we're gonna hopefully get some questions. So excited to do this with you, Jim. You're in Colorado, right?
I am. I'm in Boulder, Colorado, or near
All right.
Boulder.
Oh, nice. All right, it's the top of the hour. We really welcome everyone who's here, and as I've always said to you, this is a dialogue. Jim is so generous of his time to join me today. This is the beginning of a series of uh, live events we're going to do on Joy of Agility. We have an all-star lineup of people coming. Linda Rising will be coming, joining me. Esther Derby. We've got Ward Cunningham joining.
Wow.
We have I'll publish the full list, but it's going to be an incredible journey, and we're starting it with one of my favorite people in Agile and in consulting, Jim Highsmith. So, Jim, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks. We've had a lot of good times together.
I've been
And so,
yes.
Josh and I were doing 10 days of consulting in China about 15 years ago. And we walked in thinking we were going to do a consulting gig for a half a dozen people, and there were 60 people in the room. So we basically taught a 10-day Agile class, and I would say some stuff for about a half an hour, and then Josh would be figuring out what he was going to say, and he would talk for a while, and I figured out what I was going to say. It was an intense 2 weeks.
It was supposed to be like a bunch of executive strategy meetings, and it turned into 60-person course. Yeah, that was interesting. I remember vividly that after, and I love Chinese food, and when we ate a lot of Chinese food, but at a certain point, I was like, we need something different. And Jim and I went to a McDonald's. That was pretty funny. Welcome, Carol, John. Yeah, feel free to speak up and on the comments. We'd love to see who's here and just shout out your name. And again, don't be shy about asking questions. We love to, intersperse questions throughout these sessions. But time is short, so we need to use it wisely. Jim, if you don't know Jim Highsmith, you're really missing out. Jim's written many books, and they're incredible books. Well, I mean, really, one of the most important books came out before the Agile Manifesto and before the real use of the word Agile, and it was your adaptive software development book. And that's what, 96?
99.
Oh, 99. Okay. Yeah. So that was right. Yeah, you were writing it during those years. And right. 96 is 99 is just, it came out right at the beginning of this whole movement. So that's an important book to read. And the latest book is Wild West to Agile, right? And it's a wonderful historical look at everything from what, the 60s up till the modern times.
Right. It starts with my first job on the Apollo program out of engineering school.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I loved the book. So if you haven't read this book, this new book, Wild West to Agile, check it out. It's a great read. So I'm seeing, David, good to see you. Brandon, and others without names. User story coach Barney from Scotland. Excellent. Again, if you want to ask questions, just post them in the chat, and hopefully we'll get to them. So the purpose of this talk is to this dialogue really is to just get a chance to both speak to the larger picture of where Agile's going, but also this mantra, which is one of the mantras in the book Joy of Agility, which is be quick, but don't hurry. I didn't make that up. It comes from a fantastic coach named John Wooden. I remember back in the day working with Jim. Jim and I've worked on many projects together. But Jim, you would say that phrase.
Yeah, I used it a lot because it really talked about the idea of you've got to practice on something and practice and practice and practice to be quick without stumbling.
Right.
And as opposed to hurrying up. And I see too many people and did at the time. They were hurrying. They didn't have a skill. And so that hurrying just got them into a bad place.
Yeah. Yeah. What it strikes me so much about this is this phrase is not in any framework. There is no Agile framework that basically says be quick, but don't hurry. And yet I view this as such an important operating system level thing. As I navigate the world, I have those words in my head all the time. if I'm backing out of my driveway, I'm literally thinking, be quick, but don't hurry. Cause I could run someone over. I could cause damage, and it's in my brain. It's in my brain whenever I'm doing anything. Am I being quick here or am I hurrying? And I say this because so many people say, you know, what do you do to be agile? What do you do? And uh, be quick but don't hurry is a do. It's literally telling you what to do, but you have to think.
Well, one of the things that I've been talking about in terms of trying, what were the disappointments about Agile, and then what were the accomplishments of Agile? And one of the disappointments, and I think this is natural with a movement that's been going for this long, is that we've got a lot. I'll use Jerry Weinberg's law of strawberry jam. The wider you spread it, the thinner it gets. And so out on the edges, we got real thin knowledge, and really it got me to thinking about knowledge is not what we need. We need capability, and capability is knowledge plus experience plus the ability to make decisions. And it's all three of those things. And so I think when we try to hurry, we hurry a decision, or we hurry into something based on limited knowledge without having any experience at it. And
Right.
so I think you got to have all three of those things, and that capability is really thin. And so at the edges out here, I think we've got novices teaching novices today.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's been a bit disappointing to see the level sometimes where it gets to, where it's just so surface level and ritualistic. Follow these rituals and you'll be agile. You know, um, you know, the topic of like where agile is today. Do you think that the majority will ever really grasp agility, or is it always going to be a minority?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it's gonna be somewhere around the 50% level, I hope.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, but it's not ever going to be everybody.
Yep.
You know, the late majority is going to stick to the older way of doing things, because one of the things that you got to change is not only the software development or product development environment, you've got to change the executive environment, and
Right.
that takes longer. So I have two initiatives I'm working on this year. One is this reimagining agile, and, then the other one is reimagining management and leadership.
Hmm.
And so those two things are complementary to each other. And I think it's the leadership piece that we uh, have kind of fallen down on.
Yeah. Well, I think that's. I guess what comes to mind for me is, and we have a question by Dave Rooney. We're going to get to that question, Dave Rooney. Thanks for showing up and being here and asking that question. I want to get to it, but I want to ask you, like, you're talking about experience and capability and decision making. In my experience, people don't really grok this stuff until they've truly experienced it.
Right.
They words don't do it. Um, Articles, blogs, videos, that doesn't do it. You literally have to like get your hands dirty and experience it. And so to me, that's been the biggest missing part, is that we have not succeeded in putting people into truly deeply agile contexts.
They've experienced what they think Agile is,
Right.
but they haven't been in a real collaborative group that works together well, that is focused on value and is, to the customers, and is also try to build a valuable workplace. If you take the Agile Manifesto down to its essence,
Hmm.
it was really all about building great products and building great work environments. Those were the two things that it really talked about. So performance and people.
Right.
And you've got to experience both sides of it to really understand what it's all about.
Yeah, and it was a bold, move back in that time. This is a 2001, and then sort of in the late 90s. I mean, late 90s was where it all started to get birthed, and it was a very, very big change from the old way.
It was, and I think that people don't realize a couple of things that happened. One of the things they realized that happened around that turn of the century, or the turn of the decade there, I guess it was the century, uh, is the internet. But what they missed a lot of times is the fact of what that internet caused. It caused IT shops to move from building systems for internal use to building systems for external use. And those were two very different environments. Internal users could say, you could take 12 months to deliver a product. In the internet driven era, you couldn't take 12 months to develop a product. And so what happened is in the early 2000s, most big companies broke their IT departments into two groups, the legacy group, excuse me, and the internet group. And they fought because the legacy group would say, oh, these guys on the internet side, they're just building toy systems. And the people in the internet groups would say, oh, these are just legacy guys. They don't know anything about, how to really do systems. And so we kind of went on from there.
Yeah, and there's the phrase move quickly and break things, or I'm not sure if I'm saying it
Right.
exactly right, but that was a Facebook mantra. And eventually that changed when they had to mature. But that was a large part of the movement, right? Was just move quickly and break things. Don't worry about breaking things. You'll fix them along the way. That's a tricky message, because if you stay in that mode forever, you're not going to be in a good place. But companies were competing to go very, very fast,
Right.
and you had some crazy stuff happening in the early 2000s. It helped me a lot because when the bust occurred in 2000, suddenly all the dot bombs occurred,
Right.
and
And you can really think about that in terms of going fast. One of the things about going fast or going hurrying is you built up technical debt.
right,
You were quick. One of the ways to be quick uh, was to be fast enough to put all the good things into practice so that you actually turned out software with less technical debt
right,
so that you could go on to the next time and the next time, the next time. One of the things the internet changed was the frequency of feature release. Because back in the old days, pre-2000, you had these big systems and they might get updated once a year or once every 6 months. And once you hit the internet era, that was a lot more frequent.
right.
So the idea of technical debt had a lot more impact in this more frequent delivery situation. But I'm afraid now that we've gone actually too far the other way because you keep hearing the term feature factory, where it's just churn out features, churn out features, churn out features without
Yes,
really any goals or product vision.
right. Yes, as Fortune's saying here, move fast and break things leaves you with a ton of tech debt, which quickly becomes extremely expensive. And after a while, it can prevent you from extending the product at all. Absolutely agree with that. But you also have to appreciate that, companies like Facebook if they moved slowly, they might have had some other company eat their lunch, it's, it's basically it's a balancing act of some sort for some of these companies, ideally you're crafting awesome software and doing it quickly, and you're never really breaking stuff the way that we've seen with tech debt accumulate, right? But that's rare. It is rare because there's not enough crafters in the world. So yeah,
Well, one of the things that you talked about in the book was this thing of looking at things you don't do. And I think that's one of the things that gets overlooked in Agile is the things that you don't do are as important as the things that you do. And I remember we worked with a company up in Canada that built medical instruments into about 2005, 2006. And we had been in there about 18 months and worked with them. And their IT director had to speak at a conference. And so he started off and he said, we had the marketing department come to us and ask us to build a system for them. And here were the 100 features they needed. And he said, okay, what are the 3 features you want us to do first? And they said, no, we need 100. He said, fine, we'll get you all 100, but what are the first 3? So they built the first 3 and he came back and he said, okay, out of the 97 that are left, what are your top 3? They said, no, we need all the 97. And he said, you're going to get all 97, but what are your top 3? So they built the next 3. And they did that about 3 or 4 times and they got the 20 features installed. And they said, what are your next 3? They said, well, the 20 you got are really pretty good. and we're going to stop the project for now. We may come back later and ask for some of the other ones. And he said if they had done a traditional approach to software development and done a big requirements document, they would have implemented all 100 and thrown a lot of money away. And so this idea of really focusing in on those things that you really need, and it's all the things that you don't do that are also really important. And
Right.
so today, when you have these feature factories that are just turning out features because they can,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the best thing to do.
So that brings me to a question. There's this wonderful phrase in the principles of the manifesto, which is maximizing the amount of work not done,
Right.
which speaks to the story you just told, right? They did 20 of the 100 features, and that was sufficient. They maximized the amount of work not done. Can you tell me about the authoring of that particular principle and the thinking behind it? Because I believe it fits well into be quick, but don't hurry. If you're going to be quick, you better figure out what not to do.
You know, of course, the principles were just sort of thought about a little bit during the meeting in Snowbird, and those were done offline. I think on one of Ward's wikis, as I remember it.
Right.
And we crafted those over the next several months. So it took us 2 days to do the values, and it took us 3 months to do the principles.
Oh, that's
Because
interesting.
you can imagine with that group, the
Mhm.
rewording and rewording and rewording. It's amazing we got the values so crisp and clear. And I don't know who brought it up. I don't know the source of that particular one. And one of the things that we've maintained all through the years is whether it has to do with agile, picking agile as a name or picking the values, is that it was a collaborative effort. And that we try hard not to say somebody came out with this idea first, because it didn't matter that they came up with that first. What it
Right.
mattered is what came out of the collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Ward Cunningham introduced that,
It wouldn't surprise me.
maximize the amount of work not done. It sounds very Ward or Cunningham-ish, but to me, it's something missing in the agile world because, again, as you talk about, business brings things to build, and there's not enough discussion about how to do a 70% version of a story. That's sufficient. That's plenty for what the users want. You don't have to do all the bells and whistles, the heated leather seats and the moonroof. Give us the working version first and learn from it rapidly. Maximizing the amount of work not done. I ended up calling it bargain hunting, is looking for these high value at low cost types of features. But when I think about groups that are going slowly, one thing I see out there is that they don't maximize the amount of work not done. They're not looking at what not to do, as you say.
Right. I think that's true, and I think it's an issue. I used to draw this diagram that said, would you rather have 100% of the value for 100% of the cost? Would you rather have 90% of the value for 60% of the cost? And I'll tell you, every executive I run that by, I know what the answer is going to be.
Right. Yeah. And you're one of the things I love the most about you've created. It's a very simple thing, but it's the agile triangle. You all are probably familiar with the iron triangle, but Jim invented the agile triangle, and it's a beautiful thing, right? So the iron triangle is, of course, scope, schedule, and cost, right? Think of the three triangle points, right? Well, Jim changed it to value at the top, quality at the one edge, and then constraints.
Right.
And the constraints were scope, schedule, and cost.
Correct.
And it's a beautiful model, right?
One of the things I found, and one of the reasons I developed that, is along about 2005, 2006, when I was hearing back from agile teams was, we're trying to be agile, and the boss is telling us be agile, be flexible, be quick, all this kind of stuff, but also conform to the standard measures. And what I've kind of found is that if you want to change behavior, if you want to change how you go about producing outcomes, you've got to change how you measure success. And so that's where I came up with, what we're really trying to do is deliver customer value. We're not trying to deliver features, we're trying to deliver customer value. And if we can do that with fewer features in shorter periods of time because we do less, then let's do it that way. and MVP sort of took a stab at that, but that was for startups. And we really ought to be taking a look at that all the way through the project.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, a recent client of ours, they just talked about. I was talking to the developers. I was in Malta, and they were bemoaning the fact that they built this whole feature, and it's a pretty sophisticated feature. They did a lot of revisions of it and redesigns and this and that, and it never shipped. It never shipped because at the end of the day, when they started to try it out, the user experience was horrible,
Right.
and so it never went live. And they're kind of pissed about it. But the company learned from this and said, in the future we need to like usability test prototypes of this and really figure out the design of the user experience so that when we end up actually building it, it's going to be attractive and work well in the system. So they look at it all as a huge waste because they never really tested. They didn't do rapid feedback on the user experience.
Yeah. The other thing that happened when you switch to the internet from internal systems and you switch to customer orientation from internal customers, you made the product management and product ownership a much more important role in an organization. And
Right.
we realized that we didn't have enough people with product experience.
Right. And so this brings me to your book. I'm not trying to just pimp your books here, but they're
That's all
they're
right.
they're great books. And so I think your best-selling book is the Agile Product Management book
Project
and
management.
project management. Yes, but very much about
But
about
it's interesting how people today, you think that they know some of the history, but they really don't. And so, for example, I just happened to have that project management open a couple of months ago, and I saw something. There was a diagram on guidelines for documentation in an agile project.
Mm.
I said, and so I just took that and I said, this came out in a 2009 book. I thought it might be interesting. I got 80,000 hits on LinkedIn.
Yeah, there's still, yeah. I mean, we they're not necessarily a field of scholars, and I think we need to be because we're not going to improve if we don't study the wisdom of the ages. Now, you did want to talk about Slack. I happen to brought up my copy of Slack here. We have about 8 minutes left. Oops, Slack by Tom DeMarco. What did you want to say about that in regards to this? Be quick, but don't hurry.
Well, I think sometimes that we hurry into things. I used to say slow down in the beginning of a project and make sure that you understand what the project is all about, who it's for, what the goals are before you start in on the project. And I captured that in the Agile Project Management book. Something everybody uses, a one-page project data sheet. But during every retrospective, I would bring that out and say, this is still the direction we're going.
Right.
Because people get lost in the details too often and they don't understand the whole overview of the product or the project. And
Yep.
the same thing happens with, and DeMarco wrote this book, Slack, because we've got to slow down sometimes and think things through. We also have to have Slack in executives. I wrote an article on an IT executive who'd been through three major agile transformations, one in an organization of 20 plus thousand IT people. And his right-hand person that worked for him over these three big transitions wrote this. This is my 42nd year working, and I've never met another C-level executive who has time on his hands to talk and listen to people. He's the only C-level executive whose agenda is not tapped. He has time for people. This guy used to take Friday afternoons and he would ask his managers, his executives, to send him the names of 10 employees at the lower level who'd done a great job that week, and he would spend a half an hour on the phone talking to them.
Wow.
So that's executive time taken to really get down and know the people that you're working with, the people all through the organization. And I think sometimes we try to bypass those kinds of steps.
Yeah, as Code Monkey said here, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, and that's definitely an example. We're not very good at slow, and to be quick, you need to understand slow, and you need to be able to practice slow. I think it was Dave Rooney. Dave turned me on to a book about slowing down, and I'm not remembering the name, but it's definitely an important book, and it's hard to slow down. John Wooden, the famous coach, would slow down these basketball players that come out of high school. They were championship basketball players in high school. They get to UCLA and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff that are not. It's not the Wooden way. The Wooden way was very, very balanced, very quick, but not out of control. Not leaping and jumping and leaning and hitting
Right.
the basket. He'd blow his whistle and say, "Nope, slow down." Ah, Dave, thanks, Dave. In praise of slow, he would slow them down and slow them down and slow them down, and teach them how to play controlled basketball. And that was his way of then once they learned how to play the controlled way of basketball, balanced, passing the ball correctly, not doing crazy stuff, then they'd learn how to speed it up and speed it up and speed it up.
When I think of be quick but not hurry, the thing that comes to my mind first is I used to do a lot of mountaineering. And I can remember one time we were up on a mountain in Oregon, and it was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so the snow had heated up and these boulders had rolled down the hill. And we had to cross this boulder field. And you could see it was like bowling balls had come down and cut grooves in the snow. And so the quicker we got across there, the better off we'd be. But if you go too quick, you stumble because you got crampons on. If you go too quick, maybe you miss a crevasse that's covered up with snow. If you go too quick, maybe you run into a boulder. So there was one time at least we had to stop and let a boulder go by in front of us.
Oh boy.
So that, and they're not very big, some of them were this big, some of them were this big, but you didn't want to get hit by one of those. And so it was a matter of, you're quick, but you're not hurrying, because if you hurry, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So that always comes to mind when I think about being quick, but don't hurry.
It's a great example, because I see companies in this space, the industry, the software industry, where there are boulders that are rolling down, metaphorically, and they need to stop and deal with that, which is, look, you've just done some great work, but now you've got tech debt and it's getting in your way deeply, and you're not organized to fix it, and you need to stop and slow down and fix some of that stuff. Ideally, you'd been doing it all along the way, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. We're not recognizing the boulders.
Right. I can remember one of the first projects I worked on, or one of the early Agile projects I worked on, was up in Canada. And these people had a deadline to get this product out because they wanted it to go in an early release of the Microsoft tablet. And so this was in 2002, something like that. And so they had an absolute firm time deadline. And they made the deadline, but the team was a little disconcerted because they'd had to accumulate some technical debt near the end. And they went back to their management and said, "We want 6 weeks to get rid of this technical debt." And they finally sold it to their upper management, who kind of grumbled about it. But about 2 months later, they had a request come in from the marketing department that the fact that they'd gone back and gotten rid of all that technical debt helped them turn out the next feature set much, much faster than it would have otherwise.
That's a perfect story. Yep. I remember that story. I tell that story. It's a great story of having the discipline to pay down the tech debt. Yes, you hit the deadline. Yes, you made it to that conference and sold a bunch of stuff. Great. Now fix it. As Carl's saying here, you need to stop, look, and listen, right? You need to pay attention to what you've just built and what it needs, and not just barrel on, hurrying and rushing your way, forward. That's not necessarily going to yield success. Yeah. Well, this is a very short 30 minutes passes so quickly. It's unbelievable. And I'm sorry I didn't get to a bunch of the other questions and comments up here. But the movement you've started here with, your first book, on adaptive software development, and then all the other books, and then all the, work you've done on the manifesto, and leading and continuing to lead even today. Yesterday, Jim published a wonderful article on, bringing back the soul of Agile. And, I recently saw a show about James Brown. He's considered the godfather of soul. And I really view you as the godfather of Agile soul. So
Thank you.
I think it's important to pay attention to what Jim's saying, and let's re-energize. I keep saying we're at the early days of the agile movement. Okay. Yeah, you could think it's old, it's out of date, blah, 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 but it's not. These ideas are timeless. And we need to get better at helping more people appreciate and love them and get the joy out of agility.
Yeah.
So
I
Jim,
really like your book. You know, we're plugging each other's books here, but it's a great book because it talks. Well, it's stories, and stories evoke emotions, and that's what we need more of.
right. Thank you, Jim. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone
Thanks, Josh.
for joining. And we'll be back. As I said, we have a star-filled lineup of people coming to the coming shows on Joy of Agility. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in a future live session. Thanks, Jim.